major malfunction. Didn't Mommy and Daddy show you enough attention when you were a child?
Let's play this backwards and see if it gets any better.
Let's get down to business. What do you say?
Show me the money!
Always be closing. Always be closing.
You're now listening to Boots to Business with Daniel Hrabowski.
And welcome to Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Hrabowski. We are here every Sunday from 5 to 6 p.m. on WFLA Orlando. You can find us at FM 93.1, 94.1, or 107.7. You can find us online in the socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Doesn't matter. You can find us, or you can go to www.boots-to-business.com. We want to thank our first sponsor as we get in, before we jump into too far into the show today, Insurance Claims Headquarters. Insurance Claims HQ, powered by the Hair-Shannara Trial Attorneys. Their commitment is to help make you whole again after a disaster. Call them at 844-252-4684 or visit them at insuranceclaimhq.com. And we're immediately going to kind of roll into, we have a new sponsor for our show, and we actually have the owner of that company in here today. So in the studio today, we have Lynette Young from Claim Wizard. Hi, Lynette.
Well, hello today.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm in Florida.
Florida is good. And we also have Melissa Jacob from Striking Brand joining us again today. So thank you for coming in, Melissa.
Of course.
So today's show is going to be a little bit different. We're not going to focus a whole lot on the military side of things. It's going to be very business oriented. And one of the reasons that I was absolutely thrilled to have Lynette on the show is because her and I speak a lot of the same language when it comes to operations and processes and procedures. And we tend to live in a lot of the same circles where we have very similar conversations with a lot of the same people who are asking a lot of questions as far as, like, if I want to do this with my company, what does this look like? And what we've kind of come to terms with is that we're both going to live in the same space. We have a tremendous amount of mutual respect for each other. And it doesn't matter what type of company you have, at the fundamental level, operations and processes are the same. Would you agree? So Lynette is in town for the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters Conference, which starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow and then through the weekend, yeah.
And are you doing any speaking or anything while you're there? Or are you just attending?
We're just supporting with our handshakes and our dollars.
There you go. So Lynette's been in the industry for about 25 years.
You have to age me. It's coming up on 27 years.
27
She started
years.
when she was 16, though. So.
That's right. That's
I
right.
did. As a baby.
And so she has a company called Claim Wizard, and they are a CRM specifically designed for public adjusters and people who handle claims, which is a space that we've talked about at length in here. In my opinion, I don't think that there is a better suited CRM for our side of the industry. There's a ton of them that can be molded into different aspects of what you want, but Lynette and her husband have spent decades building this out to be exactly what it is. And her and I have a lot of really in-depth conversations about processes. And one of our sponsors on here, Insurance Claims HQ with Galen Hare, Lynette and I have both been on his podcast, and we both talk about a lot of process stuff. So what is one of the biggest things that you've seen in your 27 years in this industry?
She said, "Stop saying the years."
saying
I feel like
I
it's
think I'm
important.
27 in my head.
But I feel like it's important to really
Experience.
identify the
Yeah.
level of experience that
Right.
Lynette has. I mean, we don't see a lot of people in our industry who have done one thing for a long period of time. And there's always this running joke in our industry, like, you didn't end up here because of a string of good life choices, right? So a string of things happen negatively for you to land here. I think Lynette and her husband are an anomaly in that capacity, right? Because you guys chose to do this because you felt like you could produce something that was viable for the entire industry, correct?
We did. Actually, the reason why I fell into this is we had met. I've been full-time working this for 10 years now. My company's Claim Wizard's now 10 years old. So 17 years prior to that, we had to have other jobs because, it really wasn't, you got to eat while you're building something.
Right.
So he got into this because of his brother, who used to be a public adjuster, and my husband was kind of the software geek. And then I got into this because on my second or third date with my now husband, something happened and he had to go visit a public adjusting client at their office. And I was like, oh, what's this all about? And so that's what landed me here. So it was accident, but by choice.
And that started in Jersey?
Yes, Jersey, Pennsylvania, that whole area, it's like an ecosystem unto itself to public adjusters.
It is, and unless you live there, you have no bearing on the amount of public adjusters that live there, the amount of claim events that are up in that part of the country. I know coming out of Texas, the first time I met a PA from Pennsylvania, he was like, "We get a ton of claims up here." And I was like, "Really?" And I said, "Is there a saturation of public adjusters?" He goes, "Oh yeah, they're everywhere up here."
Yeah.
And you don't realize that unless you're in that market. I think there's a certain level of isolation, which speaks volumes about what you guys have built, because I know companies from California to New York that use Claim Wizard.
I think we have 3 or 4 countries now at this point.
Really?
Yeah. If they have laws and insurance similar to here, like the Philippines, they don't have insurance. If your house burns down, you hope your neighbors like you. They'll help you rebuild it. But yeah, there's a lot of areas in the world there's no concept of property insurance or insurance like ours in general. So anywhere that has similar insurance structures, Canada, U.S., Mexico.
I would
US,
not have.
yeah.
I would not have known that.
Why do you say that it's like its own ecosystem up there and that it has a lot of claims? What's that about?
Oh my goodness. So I work in a lot of areas, obviously, but 99%, let's say, are in the U.S. If I always joke that if you tell me how you work a claim, like the type of claim that you have, I can tell you where in the country you're located, because they're how they work claims in the Philadelphia, Ben Salem, that whole kind of New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area, to how they work it in Texas. Because now for 6 years we've been in San Antonio, Texas. We moved from Jersey down to there because I hate snow. And then like Florida is its own country when it comes to public adjusting, and then Miami is its own country within a country when it comes to public adjusting. So how the company structures are, how their processes are, how they staff, the type of claims that they take, it's all very regional.
Okay. I didn't know that.
And that's builds this huge portfolio of information within the CRMs. And I think that's one of the things that initially when I started messing with Claim Wizard years ago was that it was the amount of information that has been compiled over the years to say, if you're here, these are the statutory guidelines. There's timelines for SPOLs or sworn proof of loss. So when you're working a claim, having come out of Texas, we have this. We're always kind of competing in the PA space with a lot of contractors because there's no contracting laws out there. You see the exact opposite in Florida, where by and large, most upstanding contractors are licensed appropriately and do things appropriately, and they can get you the information that you need. You're on a fishing expedition constantly in Texas. But there are different requirements for different documents within the claim process that can either help or hinder whether you can indemnify the insured appropriately. And when I first got into the PA side, the first CRM that I had ever touched was Claim Wizard, and I spent hours going through all the stuff in there. And then
you were insufferable.
I was. I am. It's who I am as a person.
He owns it at least.
I'm just going to say it.
But it's kind of one of those things where when you're having conversations with other operationally minded people, it can either be really dry and boring and painful for the other people around, or you can try find things to make it a little bit more exciting and try to get people to understand why these things are important. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Lynette and I both will 100% agree on, is that without processes and without real operational structure, you're hamstringing your own company. And for a lot of owners, it's hard to kind of prep yourself to eventually be moved out of that space by implementing all of these things. And so when we have conversations with companies, because Lynette does a lot of consulting as well, because I mean she has this space where you have this wealth of data and information and experience that you're an easy person to ask a lot of questions to. And I think a lot of times especially in our industry, it's really easy to want to ask those questions and know that you have to do those things. But the idea of actually removing yourself from being the figurehead or the spearhead of what needs to happen within your own company is a really, really hard concept, because you're the one that built it. You're the one that spent the 2 or 3 years growing it into something that it is. And the idea of somebody coming in and taking it from you, I think sometimes it's kind of like, I want to take my ball and go home. So hold that thought. We will dive further down into this because I love Lynette's perspective on this exact topic when we come back. And again, you're listening to Boots to Business. I'm Daniel Rabowski. We'll see you guys here in a few.
We now return to Boots to Business with Daniel Rabowski.
And welcome back to Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Rabowski. In studio with me today is Lynette Young, the owner and CEO and what is it, head alchemist?
No, sorceress.
Sorceress. It's a really cool title. I dig it. For a company called Claim Wizard, who is a CRM for really anybody who handles insurance claims. Doesn't necessarily,
First-party claims, definitely.
Yeah, doesn't have to be specific to being a public adjuster.
Correct.
Also in studio is Melissa Jacob from Striking Brand.
Hello, hello.
And this part of the show is brought to you by Shield Tech Roofing Solutions, your premier destination for commercial roofing excellence when it comes to protecting your commercial property. Trust in the top-tier roof coatings and expert repair services that Shield Tech provides. Explore our specialized solutions for commercial roofs today at shieldtechroofing.com. So before the break, we were talking about company growth and our industry. I don't know that you could find another industry that's comparable when it comes to the amount of kind of bottle rocket growth that we see within companies, because guys will come into a company, they'll see how the successful version of what they want looks, and they go, I can do this. And then they'll go start their own company, and at some point they have to transition it to actually being a business and being run like a business. And that's where people run into problems. So Lynette and I've talked about this a handful of times about at some point you're taking hats off, and for a lot of people that's hard to do. Yeah,
It's super hard. It's emotional. I've worked with other types of small businesses in the past, like franchise holders and things like that, and there definitely seems there's more of an emotional impact for public adjusting business owners. And it's funny, like Daniel and I talk about, like, okay, are we like going to be competitors or not, like in the consulting space, because we definitely have different things. And I always joke that I'm kind of like the bartender or the therapist in the industry, because people will come and tell me all of these things, like, you know, my wife is my CFO and, you know, she's not really doing something right. And like, okay, are we doing marital advice here or business advice? Because there's so many family-run businesses. Traditionally, the people that start the companies are public adjusters, and then they get too big to do, or they, you know, take on too much, and they have a hard time letting their ego let things go. So it's, you know, when you can go down to processes and statistics and metrics, that takes the emotion out of it, but it's still really a hard thing to do.
And it is, because, you know, it's almost, I joked with a buddy of mine at one point. I said, coming into companies sometimes is like reporting a mother to CPS, right? Because like your kid needs to be taken to foster care. Somebody needs to take this portion away from you and needs to be handled by another person who's not you. And there is that emotional attachment to things. And because again, you're the one that built it. You're the one that started it. And a lot of times companies who are grown to that point are started by people who are more visionary. They're the dreamers. They're the I want this, you know, over long term, I want it to be a thing. Well, they need an operations person. They need an integrator. They need somebody that's the yin to their yang to brake check them when they are doing things that are maybe, it's not necessarily that they're not in the best interest of the company, but sometimes they're just done too early, or they're done with the wrong data, or they're done with ill advisement from somebody that they trust, or but to Lynette's point, a lot of times it is. You're the first person that you can trust a lot of times when you're starting a business is your spouse. And so it's easy to go, hey, babe, what are you good at? What can you do? And for some people, they get stuck there, and the spouse goes out and learns the things that they need to learn to be effective in that space. And then for some of them, they don't. And one of the hardest things to do is in that case is to have that conversation and be like, hey, your brother, wife, cousin, sister, aunt, neighbor, whoever it is. And not to say that you can't function in that space, but it does present scenarios where you are having some tougher conversations. And I think when you're in that, you have to be able to kid glove that situation a little bit. And so where Lynette gets a lot of that, like the very young startup PA firms that are like, I don't know what to do now. And so she does a lot of consulting with them on that kind of level. Which I think is super cool. And she's been able to do that for so long.
Yeah, they don't know what they don't know. Yeah. They know the art and science of adjusting, maybe, and they don't know anything else.
Yeah. It's like taking somebody who's phenomenal at sales and then expecting them to understand finances, or expecting them to understand what an operations manager does. Like it's okay to not know. I always used to tell people, I don't need to know how to play the trumpet to orchestrate the band. And getting people to understand that, and allowing them to be able to grow past where they're at or being fine being where they're at. Because sometimes that's the answer too, right?
Yeah,
So-
not everyone wants to grow. Not everyone wants more. And sometimes there's a lot of pressure in this industry to do it. Or when catastrophic events come through, they're like, well, I'm supposed to want more or go after more. And sometimes they just don't.
and being able to have somebody that's unbiased from an outside perspective step in and say, well, I understand this is what you want to do. You're not prepped for that yet.
Right.
That's got to be a pretty common reoccurrence as well.
It is that they usually don't. They go with gut feelings, and they want more. So I'm a real big fan of looking at the bottlenecks of where the bottlenecks are. Where your bottlenecks are in your attracting clients, in converting clients, or being able to produce the content to deliver. So with those three, they always want to go to attract. They need more. I'm like, yeah, but then you don't have the facilities on the inside to deal with it, and they just it's ignored because more is always seen as better, and that's not the case.
Yeah, and we see it every year, especially when hurricane season comes around. I have so many contractors. They're like, I'm never working another hurricane. I got screwed by the insurance companies on this, so on and so forth. And then the first one spins up in the Atlantic, and they're like, so
They
where's
get
it gonna
all
hit? I'm gonna
shiny
get it.
eyed. Our wallets get itchy. Yeah.
And then they'll call public adjusters because a lot of times your more successful PA firms have worked multiple storms. They have different storm events. Some of them, specialize in certain things, and contractors want to attach themselves to people who can help. And that was always our pitch was, it's not because I know things that you don't know from a means and methods perspective or ability to say this costs this or whatever it is. It's to say that we're going to make you more efficient. We're going to take this off your plate so you guys can go do what you're good at doing.
Right.
That same rule applies just in operations in general. And it's tough for these guys to understand that sometimes, especially if it's somebody who's been in business for a long time and they're just trying to become more efficient, or if they're prepping for growth and then understanding what those brackets look like, because from a roofing perspective, there's that first million, and then there's up to 3, and then from 3 to 5 you're screwed, from 5 to 8 you're okay, 8 to 11 you're screwed, and then you just keep going. And there's because the tax brackets change, and there's as a new business owner, do you understand the tax code for millionaires?
Heck no.
So the same applies, and you have to find those people. You have to find those experts. And so people reach out to folks like Lynette and her husband. And that's why I liked what Claim Wizard had to offer in the beginning, because it was this wealth of information right there, just at your fingertips. Do with it what you will or don't. It's kind of an a la carte thing.
Yeah, we had this concept that if we could build the tool that just someone could click into and not have to think. But now going back 27/10 years, we realize that it is a tool. You still have to have the business acumen to kind of go into it going. One of the concepts, I'm not sure, Daniel, if I've ever talked to you about this, but I have this concept, especially
Ooh, I'm excited.
something we haven't talked about, this concept of $1, $10, $100 work.
Ooh, no, I haven't heard this.
So this was kind of a way to ease people into being comfortable with taking roles off of their company, so they are not the bottlenecks and they're not the ones actually dragging their companies down in productivity and profitability, because those are the two things I look at,
Right.
or efficiency and profitability. So everyone had, and it's not literal $1, $10, but everybody has $100 work. It's your core of genius, right? Of what you're supposed to work on. If you're an amazing public adjuster, that's what and even within that nuances of that, maybe you love the sales, maybe you love the estimating part of it. If you're a roofer, maybe you love, scoping out the jobs, maybe you love the sales part of it, maybe you love the team building. Like even within it, there's, micro pieces of it.
Yep.
That's your $100 work. That's what you should be focusing on.
Okay.
But so many of those guys get hung up on doing the $10 and the $1 work of answering phones all hours, answering emails. Some of them, like these owners of companies, and there's 30, 40 people, and they're sitting there doing their own social media. Like that's somebody else's $100 work. Don't deprive them as small business owners. Our job is to make jobs for other people.
Right.
And if you're doing that $10 work for yourself, that's somebody else's $100 work that you could be giving them to do. So I try to get them to we do all of these kind of analysis where they do a little bit of time tracking and stuff, and they say, all right, where are all my $1 and my $10 works that we can start getting off of my plate, because they don't necessarily feel so emotionally attached to it. Like their ego isn't attached to the $1 work. It's just stuff they have to get done. So usually that's like a softer way because if I start coming in and talking about OKRs, their eyes are going to roll so far behind their head. They're not even going to want to talk to me. So I try to, come up with language that is a little bit more familiar.
Right. Melissa, are you familiar with OKRs?
No.
Nobody is.
Okay,
So
good.
Just,
Thank
don't
you.
feel
just
bad.
it's just us.
Thank you.
It is, again, this is where we talk about people that are very operationally driven can get super boring, right?
Not to each other.
No,
Yeah.
I love.
Y'all are in your
so
groove.
OKRs are objectives and key results, or what is the other one they use? Objectives and known results. It's essentially the same stuff. So whenever you're talking, and you're familiar with KPIs, you've heard of KPIs, right? So KPIs feed into OKRs. So OKRs are your long-term, like we'd like to make $10 million. We want to grow to 100 people. We want to do those kind of things. So your KPIs feed. Your KPIs are the tracking of your progress towards the OKRs is really the easy way to do it. So we can kind of circle back to that again here in a minute. There's some other stuff I wanted to go over with you in the next segment. This is Boots to Business. I am Daniel Rabowski. We will see you guys in a few minutes.
We now return to Boots to Business with Daniel Rabowski.
And welcome back to Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Rabowski. This portion of the show is brought to you by Golden Temple Builders, which is a tongue twister for me every single week.
You get it, though.
Golden Temple Builders brings decades of expertise to commercial renovations and remodels. Their commitment to you is clear written pricing options tailored specifically to your project. Visit them at goldenTempleBuilders.com for details or give them a call at 321-508-0815 and let them help build your vision together. They serve Florida, Texas, and Louisiana, and oddly enough, Costa Rica, which they built some really cool houses down there. In the studio with me today is Lynette Young from Claim Wizard,
Hello.
Melissa Jacob from Striking Brand,
Hello.
and we have been talking today, very kind of nerding out for me with Lynette, talking about operation stuff and processes, and we left the last part of the show talking about KPIs and OKRs, which is everybody's snoozing listening to it right now. But it's a good segue to a conversation that I had with another guest a few weeks ago, and I think at a baseline, we kind of disagreed. So I have this thing where I believe that high-performing individuals within your company can be the biggest detriment to your growth. And for a lot of people, if you are one of those high-performing people, it's really hard for you to hear that, right? Here's why. High-performing people can do a little bit of every task. They're good enough to put the pieces together to grow and see something grow, right? But at some point, they have to start removing themselves, and that's where they struggle. My guest at the time was Jake Guidry, the owner of Tree Guardian, and he's like, well, no, I love high-performing individuals. I'm like, no, you should, but you need to isolate them to the task and let them be high-performing in that space. If I'm an operations person, don't let me be in charge of salespeople. If I'm a widget builder, don't expect me to do something other than make me create these confines for this person, let them be high performing in one space.
It's like what you were talking about with the $100 job type situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But high performing people struggle to allow other people to take things off their plate because it's the I'll just do it myself mentality. Right. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think high performers, there's a bell curve when they're working in a company because generally operations and owners needs them in a specific box to do specific things. And high performers are polymaths. They want to stick their face and they want to improve processes and fix funnels like before it hits them and after they hits them. And I look at it as a bell curve. And if you can hit them and ride with them and keep them happy up until the top of their bell curve, they're going to be happy. But there's going to be diminishing returns where they are unhappy because they want to do more and their role in the company is boxed.
And a lot of times we find operations people are those very high performing people because they immediately see the result of their work, right? So if I'm collecting data and I have it all in front of me, I'm like, I've done this task and I've completed it. Good, right? And then now what do I do with this data? Then we start forecasting. We start making lines intersect and doing all this geeky stuff, right? I'm immediately seeing a return on the work that I'm doing. I can perform very well in that space. I'm not good in a lot of other spaces, and I can recognize that. But I think you're exactly right in that it's about evolving the task then, right? So when you're at the top of that bell curve, the struggle I think a lot of times is when, especially for people like us, if I produce you a ton of stuff and I say, because I see this, this is statistically what this means, when people don't wrap their head around that or they refuse to believe it, we just feel like every bit of work that we just did was for nothing, right? And I mean, so when you're data driven, my emotions are not involved. And I know for a lot of people that I've worked with in the past, hearing the term data, operations, processes, they get tired of hearing it to the point that it becomes like a keyword that just immediately triggers something in
Or
their
like
brain.
the new bean counters.
Yeah.
Kinda are.
But you can. I mean, the ability to forecast based off of data and not emotion is what makes companies successful. And the first year, 2, 3 years in business, depending on when you can identify that you're at that end of your own individual growth, it's hard to accept that there has to be a change because the way you've been doing it is what got you to where you are today. So, it's always fun to have that conversation because it's always the really high performing people who perform in a variety of different spaces at a high level, trying to get them to understand
It is. There's actually, and a lot of the thing that I deal with is when companies need or want to grow and they want to hire high performers, but I don't believe that you should be hiring them at the top of the bell curve because they're going to burn out quick in your company. But people will say that, but like, I need somebody to just come in and fix this and take care of it. But what happens is you're hitting them at the top of their bell curve. And then when you dig a little deeper, it's because whoever's doing the hiring or whoever's going to be working with them in the company doesn't want to train them.
Right.
I don't have time. Like, so they need to come in, hit the ground running because I don't have time. But then they bring their own processes, which usually is a good thing. Trust me. They bring their own ethics. They bring their own vision. They bring their own, culture. And sometimes you need people on the upswing and not at the top of their game. I hate to say it.
I'll agree with that, and I think you're right. I mean, when you're not, the thing is, you're not going to know unless that person's reputation precedes them. You're not going to get that from them during the interview process, right? You're not going to know how well they actually do under pressure. You don't know how much of their personality they're going to implement into their stuff, and it can create tension over time, and you have to be able to have that open line of communication with people to say, look, if I have this conversation with people all the time, at the point that I'm agreeing with everything that you said, we're all screwed, right? My job is to disagree with you. My place in any company, and not me as a person, me as a type of person, is to disagree with you in a healthy way. It is to help facilitate growth. And a lot of times, and I'm sure you've run across this as well, we have a completely different conversation when it comes to scaling and when it comes to growth. And a lot of people don't know that there is a difference in those. And once they understand it, the little light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, I do have all
There's
these
such
people.
a big difference. You and I have never talked about this, but I actually have a framework that I'm in the process of making an official framework. And I've been doing it since like 1999. And at that time, there were 3 things in the framework, and now there's 7. So I call it the 7 C's of small business because I'm not very creative with that.
I like it.
But there are 7 stages that all businesses are in. And when I look at public adjusters, you're starting, you're stalling, you're selling, you're shifting, you're sailing, which is kind of like where you want to be in the middle, and sinking, right? So I think I got all 7 of them. I've just been doing it for 25 years, right? But depending on where you are in your business, so if you're starting, your needs are very different than if you're soaring, right? So like these guys down here, roofers and PAs and everything, they get a big cat in their backyard. Like, it's a lot of a good thing is not always a good thing. But what they need to focus on is much different than someone starting. Someone that's company's stalling out, and by that I would look at 3 consecutive quarters, especially because it's so weather driven in a lot of areas of the country. If you can get through 3 quarters and not 3 quarters of the year and still see either a flat line or even a little downslide, that's stalling. So there's a lot of things that you need to pay attention to depending on where you're starting from.
I'll agree with that. And real quick, I mean, and a lot of times it is hard to identify where you're at in that space. And we'll dive back into that here after this break. This is Boots to Business. I am Daniel Rabowski. We'll see you guys here in a few minutes.
Is it that time already?
It is.
Coming to phase 4, section 4, portion 4.
One more.
No. You don't get one more. No, stand by. We'll be right back.
We now return to Boots to Business with Daniel Rabowski.
All right, welcome back to Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Rabowski. We're going to wrap this show up on a high note today. This portion of the show is brought to you by Coastal Claims Services, your trusted partner in the public insurance adjusting space, headquartered here in Florida, serving clients nationwide. They specialize in residential roof claims, and when it comes to protecting your home and ensuring that you receive fair insurance compensation for your covered peril, count on their experienced team. Explore their comprehensive services at coastalclaimsservices.net. I don't think that's right. I think it's coastalclaims.net. I'll have to double check on that. So I apologize.
I'll Google it.
I think it's Coastal Claims.
It might be both.
I think it's just coastalclaims.net, but I could be wrong. And let Coastal Claims Services and their team of public adjusters be your advocate for hassle-free insurance claims. It is coastalclaims.net. So I should know that, and I kind of feel like an idiot for not.
Nah, you got it.
So in studio with me today, Lynette Young from Claim Wizard.
Hello.
And Melissa Jacob from Striking Brand.
Hello.
We've been rocking out the last 45 minutes or so talking about operations and processes and procedures. So I have a very specific question for you, in that you say Claim Wizard's been around for 10 years. You're on a decade
Officially,
now.
yeah. The company's 10 years old.
I don't know, with the exception of maybe one or two other platforms that are not obviously claim specific, how does it feel to know that you've built something that is used by so many people, it's used efficiently, you're able to continually evolve it, like to be able to put that product out there? It's got to feel good to know that you built something that works and has withstood time.
It does. It's only within the actual last year that I've realized the magnitude of the impact that we've had in the industry. I mean, I work at the office, and people call us. They're either, they're complaining about something, they need something, whatever. Like people don't just call to say, hey, thank you, like whatever. But it's
Right.
the way it's business. I don't really care. But getting out and about, and several business owners, public adjusting business owners, within the course of 1 month, had told me that if, like, the software, obviously their businesses could exist, but it would cripple them, if not put them under, if we weren't around. And that the process that the software is built around their process, because we built it that way. So there could be 1,000 public adjusting companies, 2,000 different ways to do things, so that it's so customizable for them, and they could not have grown to the size that they're at. And I've heard that from dozens of public adjusting companies.
I hope they put those all in reviews on Google.
I wish they would. My marketing manager is like, beat me on the head with a rubber mallet kind of thing. But yeah, a lot of people, it used to be like, well, we don't want to let anybody know our secret sauce, but we're the leaders in the industry now. So, people pretty much know Claim Wizard, but it's the fact that we could impact this industry so strongly within relatively short amount of time, because public adjusting has been around since, I don't know, the 40s or something. But
I see that question posed on a couple different forums on Facebook, and I'll be honest with you, I can't remember the answer to that question. But
the Chicago fire,
I think it might be it.
that's where public adjusting, where the insurance started like that for public adjusting.
So whatever year that was, you can
Yeah.
Google that. But I think
do trivia, we could do that.
we need to do a whole episode of that. But I think there's something there. Our industry is kind of fickle, right? And we have a bunch of really weird personality types, and it doesn't take much for our industry to kind of go around and start stabbing people in the back.
Oh, dang.
And
Yeah.
it's always funny, because you do have a handful of personalities who are, I don't know what you'd call them, thought leaders or celebrities in our space, right? And I was on a Facebook post the other day, and I made a comment, and I said, just remember that a lot of these platforms and products are being paid for this person to speak about them. And I do too, right? Obviously, we're a radio show and whatever, but it's important to be able to identify those people and understand that bias exists, right? But you said something there that I wanted to spend a minute talking about. They always call with your problems. And that's one of the things that we're talking about helping companies grow. The people who are at the top, your upper level managers, your owners and all that, they don't get to live in the space of unicorns and rainbows anymore. Daily, it is, these are the problems we have to solve. These are the problems we have, especially operations people, because you're constantly looking, you're trying to play the forward thinking game and saying, okay, well, if I watch this line do this, then we're going to have to make a change. And I think that's something just from a professional development standpoint that people need to be able to understand is that when you get to a certain point in management, you don't get to revel in your own victories anymore. You are constantly inundated with the problems. And the reason that you have been moved into that position or promoted to that spot is because you have demonstrated that you are capable of handling those things. The idea of that and the reality of that are very, very different. And so when you find yourself just going, man, every day I'm getting my butt kicked, and it's always somebody complaining. It's always somebody coming to me with a problem. Just sometimes you have to recognize that that's just the role that you're in now, and you've kind of grown into that because of the experiences that you have. Would you agree?
Right. And it's not personal. I mean, just like, first party attorneys, public adjusters, I would assume roofers, resto, anyone in that kind of that second responder type role. It's just, you're seeing destruction and sadness and loss all over the place. And I think it really grinds on you. And I think not to, disassociate the humanity from it, but I mean, sometimes you have to remove yourself, and it's like, it's not a me thing, it's a all around us thing.
Well, and you have to be able to separate empathy from sympathy, and you have to be able to apply the right amount of it so you're not burdening yourself so much. It's so easy, especially after storms and stuff like that, to go in and want to help everybody. And you can't. And I know I avoided residential claims for so long for exactly that reason, because I couldn't deal with it. I didn't want to deal with the emotional attachment that everybody has to their stuff. Commercial property owners are a lot different.
Right.
Some dude in California who hasn't seen the building in 5 years doesn't really care. He just wants his stuff repaired. But if you go, and you go to the little old lady down the street's house, and her house burnt down, and it was all of her photo albums and all of her kids' stuff, and and you can't help but have some sort of emotional response to that, but you have to be able to disassociate yourself to a degree. Unfortunately, it's just one of those. If you don't, it's going to drag you down, and that I think that applies anywhere in life, really. But you do, and when you get to a certain level within a company, that's what you deal with all the time. And so, I know Lynette and I have a lot of very candid conversations on a personal level, but when I call her for something that is work related, it's always, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me fix it? Even where I'm at. And I don't think that you ever get removed from that. You just find the person that can solve your problem and hope that you can solve a problem when it reciprocates itself back to you. Would you
that's
agree?
the sign of a good leader, is not knowing everything yourself, but knowing the right people and when to ask.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And making sure that you understand that you should be teaching people to replace you. You should be. Oh, my
goodness. We could talk about this for hours.
But it's such a trust issue. So, like, how do you have a way that you can, like, build that trust with different companies and business owners?
Well, the $1, $10 definitely helps. The peel off things that they realize are not really what lights the fire in them. Yeah. That's definitely it. And then usually when they get a taste of that, they'll help, because if they're after growth, it's one thing. But if there'll be some people that are after growth, and when they get a taste of, like, okay, we can start to compartmentalize these things and peel it off like an onion, I see the benefit of this going further, and they can kind of go to that 1 degree to that level. But then there's other people that are in this for the control, and though honestly, you can't fix everybody. Just like, people are like, oh, you have competitors, claim wizard. I don't care. We can't help everybody. We can help people that want to do the things that they align with us.
Do you have clients like that you're just like, I can't help you? Like, you're beyond
repair?
repair?
Like the phone rings and we just let it go round robin for a little while because I answer the phone. But yeah, there are some people that now they run their own business. Like, not my circus, not my monkeys is said every half an hour in my office. Really? So that's kind of the way that goes. But we can't help everyone, but we can help everyone that wants help.
Okay.
No, and I think that is the idea, right? I mean, we know people are going to use the tools that they want to use, and you can tell somebody all day long that they need to sharpen their blade. If they don't want to, they're not going to. So unfortunately, you can't help everybody. And you could build the best race car on the planet. Somebody's not going to like it. Somebody's not going to want to use your brand because it's you. I mean, I have contractors I don't even return the phone call from. If I see, if they're like, hey, this is Steve from wherever, I'm like, hey, man, have a great day. And I hang up the phone. Like, I don't. There are a handful of contractors I refuse to do work with. So that's it for today's show, Lynette. I really appreciate you coming in.
This has been awesome. I appreciate you.
Awesome. And Melissa, as always.
Yes, thank you.
we have a few new sponsors that I want to kind of roll into really quickly. We want to thank Apex Performance Chiropractic, Claim Wizard, our newest sponsor, Z Goalkeeper Academy, which you can check them out at zgloves.com. And I want to apologize for Coastal for messing up their website. That is www.coastalclaims.net if you want to look them up to help out with PA services. This has been Boots to Business. I'm Daniel Rabowski. Listen to us every Sunday, 5 to 6 on WFLA Orlando, or find us on the socials, or go to www.boots-2-business.com.